All right, let's dive into one of the most mind-bending questions anyone has ever asked. Seriously. It's a question that just completely blurs the lines between science, philosophy, and, yeah, science fiction. What if everything you know, everything around you, isn't real? Today, we are digging deep into the simulation theory.
So, let's just get right to the heart of it, right? Are we living in a real physical world, or is everything you see, everything you feel and experience just part of some unbelievably advanced computer program? I know, it sounds wild, like something straight out of a movie, but you'll see the arguments for it are surprisingly compelling.
So first up, let's look at the arguments for the theory. And let's have some fun with this. We're going to act like detectives here, okay? We're on the hunt for clues that are hidden deep inside the very code of our reality.
Okay, so what exactly is the simulation hypothesis? Well, at its core, it's this idea that our entire universe, with all its galaxies, stars, planets, you and me, is actually an artificial simulation. The best way to think about it is like the most sophisticated, most realistic video game you could ever possibly imagine, and we're all just characters living inside of it.
Now, this might sound like a super modern, techie kind of idea, but questioning reality, that's one of the oldest games in philosophy for sure. I mean, you can go all the way back to Plato's allegory of the cave, or Descartes wondering if some evil demon was tricking all of his senses. Humans have always been asking, can we really, truly trust what we perceive?
The whole idea got this massive modern reboot back in 2003, thanks to a philosopher named Nick Bostrom. And his argument starts with a pretty simple, almost undeniable idea. Any civilization that manages to survive long enough is eventually going to develop just mind-bogglingly powerful computers. And that single idea leads to what he calls Bostrom's trilemma. He argues that one of these three things has to be true. Okay, number one, civilizations like ours just go extinct before they can ever create these simulations. Option two, they get the technology, but for whatever reason, they just lose interest in running simulations of their ancestors. Or option three, if the first two are wrong, then that means there will be countless simulations of past civilizations, and if that's the case, we are almost certainly living inside one of them right now. His whole point is, you kind of have to pick one. So, what's our first piece of evidence in this whole investigation? Well, a lot of people point to physics itself. Think about it. Our reality is governed by these incredibly elegant mathematical laws, almost like a pre-written set of rules for a program. And then you've got this super weird world of quantum mechanics, where tiny particles only seem to decide what to be when we're looking at them. It's strangely similar to how a video game only renders the graphics you're looking at to save processing power. And the speed of light? Why is there a universal speed limit? Could that just be the maximum processing speed of the cosmic computer running our universe?
Okay, but before we all have a complete existential crisis, let's pump the brakes a bit. Let's pivot and look at the counter-arguments. Because any good detective always questions the evidence, right? And this theory has some major hurdles. First, there's the turtles all the way down problem. If we're in a simulation, then who's simulating us? And are they in a simulation? And on, forever? Then there's just the sheer scale of it all. Critics argue that to simulate an entire universe, you'd need a computer that's bigger than the universe itself. And finally, probably the biggest scientific challenge, is that the theory is unfalsifiable. That's a fancy way of saying you can't design an experiment to prove it's wrong, which kind of puts it outside of testable science and more into the realm of a philosophical puzzle. So, we've got these compelling clues on one side and some huge logical problems on the other. You might be asking yourself, why does any of this even matter? Well, let's talk about where we find meaning, beyond the nature of reality itself. Let's just break it down. Imagine for a second we live in a real, physical world. Where does meaning come from? Well, it comes from our actions, our beliefs, our connections with other people. Now, what if we live in a simulated world? Where does meaning come from? The exact same places. The source of our reality, whatever it is, doesn't have to change the value we get from our experiences.
And that's really the crucial point here. The love you feel for your family, the pride you feel when you achieve a goal, the sadness of a loss, all of that is absolutely real to you. Your consciousness is having that authentic experience. Whether the atoms making it happen are real or simulated, the human experience that comes from them is unchanged. And at the end of the day, maybe that's the only definition of real that truly matters.
So ultimately, the simulation theory is this incredibly powerful thought experiment. It really forces us,
to confront maybe the biggest unanswered question of all. What is reality?
It kind of reminds me of that quote, you've probably heard it, often attributed to Einstein. Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. It just goes to show the line between what's real and what's an illusion has always been kind of blurry. We only perceive a tiny, tiny fraction of what's actually out there, and our brains just build the rest. The simulation theory is really just a modern spin on this very ancient mystery.
And that leaves us with one last, really provocative question for you to chew on. If you live your entire life and you can never ever tell the difference between a real world and a simulated one, does it even matter?